Today we're going to look at the dark side of leadership. Now, somebody that's got a lot of experience of working with leaders on the good side and the bad side is Professor Andrew Kakabadze. Now, Andrew, what do we mean by the dark side of leadership?
It's when things go wrong. It's when people don't want to discuss the undiscussable. It's when the elephant in the room gets larger and everybody says it's not there. And there seem to be two sides to the dark side of leadership. The first is personality, and the second is systems. The personality side is when charisma goes wrong. A charismatic personality is basically someone who exudes some motivational force that people like. And there tend to be 2 points of view on that. You're either a great communicator, or actually what you have is very weak followers. So manipulation is essentially one of the elements of charisma, and when the positive side is less than the manipulative side, that's when the dark side begins to come up. So what leads to that? One could be legacy. Whatever I do here, I want to be remembered for something. So the whole of the strategy of the company, if you're chairman or chief executive, is all around legacy as opposed to dealing with business problems. Another side to dark side is power. I really want to stamp my personality on here, and it's the stamping of my personality that takes over. And that causes tremendous problems. And the other is personal satisfaction. And sometimes you'll find quite a few leaders, in terms of sexual misdemeanors, do have a need to dominate and have a personal satisfaction with another party on a sexual basis, and that leads to all sorts of problems. So you do get, if you like, when charisma goes wrong and why it goes wrong, and that psychology dominating the rationality of strategy. There is a systems approach, and that is bribery and corruption. Now, if you go to basically 2/3 of the world, you can't get business unless you bribe. And to be quite frank with you, from Russia to China to Turkey to Greece to most of South America to most of the Asian countries, some sort of transactional cost is going to be incurred. Now, we would call it bribery in the West. There it's called a transactional cost. How do we deal with it? Well, UN won't talk about it. The global third sector organizations, third sector agencies in Geneva won't talk about it. And that means boards and top teams are left to handle essentially a non-acceptable route to market, which actually dominates the acceptable routes to market. They're left to handle that on their own. Now, imagine you're a board member and you have got the you feel that one of the issues is we could be bribing in 6 African countries to get business. But all our general managers are good. If you started the conversation and you did nothing about it to actually trace it through, you as a board director can go to prison. So you can see why there is a reluctance to talk about how we deal with so-called unacceptable transactional costs in the boardroom. So that's another dark side to leadership. So we have me as a person and us as the system.
Now, I imagine all the pulls are leave well alone. This is powerful stuff. Stay clear.
It's absolutely true. Stay clear. The people who can't stay clear are the ones who are involved. So you have a charismatic but non-listening, power-oriented, legacy-driven CEO. How can you stay clear when you see some of the business decisions concerning strategic investment are around making an impact, I don't know, in Asia, whereas in fact we should be leaving Asia? We're trying to do business, we're a minerals company, and we're trying to do business from any country in South America right through to Asia. Everybody knows the reality of transactional costs in currencies. How do you stay clear if you're a board member? I mean, the press and media are going to put 2 and 2 together. What's your position? Stakeholder relations with government, sometimes they go wrong. What's your position? Take the situation of BP. And for me, a casualty of BP was Tony Hayward. From what I saw of his performance, he was nowhere near as bad as people say. But if you look and dig deep into BP, the question really is, why was he put in front of the camera in a politically charged situation? Where was the board in all this? Where was the chairman in all this? Why hadn't the board for the last 10 years not dealt with all the merger and acquisition tensions of bringing different companies under the BP banner? Had that been sorted out? What was the lobbying effect of BP in Washington? Who was running the lobbying team? Was it a British person or was it an American? Why wasn't BP getting the commissioners in Brussels on their side? So what was going wrong in the boardroom? And there was Tony Haywood, as far as I could see, hung out to dry. So we do have problems. We do have to talk about the dark side to leadership. When you're not involved, it's embarrassing to talk about it, but the number of people who are forced to pick up the can and run with it is now getting too high.
So I think a final message really is the dark side of leadership is something that needs to be tackled. It clearly is something that's tricky, but necessary.
It's absolutely true. Just like everything that you talk about, things that went well in marketing, things that don't. We talk about it. Something that goes right with the supply chain, something that goes wrong in the chain itself. We talk about it. It's exactly the same with leadership. The difference is with leadership, it's just more emotional. It's just more threatening. It's just more uncomfortable. Now, by and large, the more an uncomfortable a problem, the more difficult to talk about the problem, actually the repercussions are worse. So if we don't talk about the dark side of leadership, basically top management is directly involved in damaging the futures of quite a few thousand people.
Andrew, there's some important issues here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.